Here we are.
There we are. Am I echoing? Is it?
No, you are very quiet still, though.
Yeah. Here's Richard.
Okay.
Shall I put him back in?
Yes.
Yeah, back in.
Yeah.
Richard will have something interesting to say, and you'll be able to hear it. That's the thing. There he is. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you might be in the world. I think this one's going to be the one in which I say next to nothing because you can't hear me as he shouts and leans forward. Well, what a week it's been. I'll start it with with Richard because he's being very accepting of landowners. That's why I wanted to have him on last week. They had a press release about landowners allowing and showing love to drones. What was that all about, Rich? And how are you? Hope you're well.
I'm well, thank you. Hopefully my audio is working for you guys. Is it all loud and clear? Fabulous. I've literally just got off the motorway, got straight to the hotel, run upstairs, did a speed test, figured out this is the best hotel to stay in the world because it's got like 150 megabits of bandwidth, and then just joined this podcast. So this is how I love to spend my evenings with you guys. But with that great news aside, to answer your question, the landowner press release was really kind of formalizing a feature we've been testing for a long time. And it's part of a whole series of features that we've been releasing this year. We've still got some more to come to make it easier for people to plan a journey with their drone and to figure out from who they might need to get permission and to make that obtaining of that permission a lot easier. And hopefully, if we have our way, effectively instantaneous, automated. So whether that's takeoff and landing, which can be really just difficult finding out who is the owner of some land, right? Much less, once you do that, how do you actually engage with them? Are they drone friendly or not, etc. can be a challenge. And this was really the number one thing that our users were telling us was the next thing that we should solve or help to solve for them. So hopefully it makes it a little bit simpler. And as we look to the future where we have Skyway operational, planning a journey anywhere in that sort of 300 kilometer-ish length area by about 10 kilometers wide, you're going to cross many, many landowners. You're also going to cross lots of different airspace stakeholders that might have an input into that journey. So again, we want to make it easy for people to get airborne and complete that journey seamlessly. And hopefully along the way, open up airspace and open up ground facilities that might otherwise be very difficult to obtain permissions for or just not accepting of drones at all. So that's really the impetus behind it, but happy to open myself up to the customary grilling now.
So here's, if I could just grill you nicely. So the Crown Estates, they actually say, and they do show on their maps already, everywhere where an aircraft is, they allow UAVs, they allow drones. Are you going to take that data and bring it in to Drone Assist so everyone can see the foreshores that we're allowed to use?
That's a cool thing I'm learning today. Like, I didn't know that the Crown Estates did that. I'm sure someone on the team did. But if the Crown Estates publish a data set which is actually ingestible, then we will ingest it. We will put it in a product and it will be available for everyone to use. I think there's probably worth just calling out, there's a couple of levels of this, right? Like the easiest thing and the quickest thing, but also potentially the thing which doesn't sort of belong in this feature we're talking about, the landowner access, is just telling you where they are, right? So we already 150 million zones around the world where you can fly as a drone or not fly a drone. So we could do that. And the question is, well, if we do that, who at the Crown Estates is going to process flight requests? Do they need to? I guess what you're telling me is that they probably don't need to if it's in one of those areas. But what if you want to fly somewhere else? Are the Crown Estate willing to entertain that, etc.?
Well, the Crown Estate lists literally the foreshore, so they have a map, and it's just the foreshore area they show that you're allowed to take off and land from, and therefore overfly, as you know, Richard, is we can overfly. But they do show on their map quite clearly the entire areas of the foreshores that they control, and it quite clearly says that you can take off and land from their foreshore.
Right.
Obviously, the top of the beach might be different because that's a council. I don't know if you've been able to scrape all the council data yet, because, for instance, where I am, the West Common, they do allow like model aircraft and drones up to 5 kilos. But then my South Common, it's just like they don't permit it as a council. Bristol's got 3 parks. Is this the kind of data you guys are looking for, scraping, or how are you finding?
Not necessarily scraping. I think one of the challenges for us, we kind of resisted doing things like web scrapes and that in the past, because it can be really brittle as a way, if someone updates it, to actually keep that data fresh. And people have an expectation, rightly or wrongly, that when they see it on our maps, we're going to treat it with the same reverence as we do with all the authoritative data. So, it's funny you mentioned councils, because councils and large landowners, estates, etc., are one of the areas that we want to work more closely with, because if you go and chat to your typical council, they're really good at geospatial data for planning permission and things like that, but usually they haven't yet annotated parcels of land with particular metadata that might say, oh, actually you can actually fly in this park. I'm fine with that. Like, you might find a sign there, or you might find another website or a web page or a PDF, but what we would like is to have the actual spatial information managed and treated in the same way that the council manages the rest of its spatial estate. So that means trying to get them access to the enterprise tools that we provide, so that they can actually then on demand publish a change or add a restriction. If they've got an event or something, then they now don't want everyone taking off from this park, because actually that park is now going to be the home of a big event. We want to put those tools in the hands of people that manage those estates. So in theory, yes, it's very easy to do, but we just have to find the right person, the right team. And as we all know, councils are generally quite cash strapped, and they don't have oodles of resources sat there to deal with these types of requests, which is another reason why we think automation is going to really, really help to keep this ticking over for people.
Can I jump in at this point then with a question? Because obviously I don't know what the end game is, and I've not had a great deal of time to read about this, to be quite honest, just because I've been swamped with other things for the last several days. Is this? I'm only concerned about this because it has rumblings of the original AirMap, pre-AirMap, where they were interested in land, and really the idea about it was not. It would end up by going, yeah, you can have permission, but we're going to charge you. And especially with councils, that will be their incentive of, yeah, you can use our land, but it's going to cost you a bucket load of money. Is that where this is going, or what's your view?
Well, to be frank, we provide the tools, right? We provide a mechanism for actually people to charge, but we don't require that they charge. Look, when we look at opening up access to any facility, whether it's airspace that you're transiting or it's a ground facility, the first thing to look at from our perspective is, without the presence of this tool, is it open and easy for people to access? And if the answer to that is no, then of course we're looking to see if it's an area of interest to people. And if it is, the question is, well, if we put our tool in here and we now enable drone operators to complete operations that they otherwise couldn't do, is that a good thing? And all of our users tell us, yes, that's a good thing. Some of our users would be quite offended at the notion that they now have access to something they otherwise didn't, but might have to pay because the landowner said, I'll do it, but I'm not doing it for free because I've got to employ a person, or I've got to change a person's role or responsibility to deal with that request. Other councils are already doing that, by the way. Lots of councils charge for access. But I would also just urge people to remember that the one community of drone operators that we don't particularly have a focus on from any commercial perspective at all is recreational and hobbyist users. I wouldn't expect to see councils or other large landowners charging hobbyists for routine access to their land. If they're already doing it, then the presence of this system should just mirror what they're already doing. If they're offering new facilities or new access, or they want to introduce a charge, then yeah, we'll support that for them. But we think that that's critical, because one of the biggest challenges at the moment with any airspace administration or any ground facility administration is everyone on the consumer side, i.e. drone operators, us, kind of expect it all for free, but actually it takes people time to do risk assessments or deconfliction analysis, etc. on their side. And sometimes they have different tolerances to risk and appetites to risk and insurance requirements. So on the flip side, those folks tell us, well, we might open it, but we do need to recover the cost for that system that we're offering.
My concern is here, what you see is when costs come into play, and we see it already now with the air traffic control, which was thanks to the law being changed sneakily after Gatwick, where it picked up the 250 grams, where you can't even use that as an option. There's people saying, well, I want 250 quid out of you. Now, if you're doing a roof inspection and it's residential, you're going to be lucky if you're charging 250 quid for that job in the first place. So already you're getting a third party asking a fee that's higher than what you're going to be able to charge. So you essentially...
Listen, you're pushing on an open door, right? Like we've said this all along, like the market isn't going to be there if you're charging more for, I don't know, the toll road than you get from the job, right?
Yes, exactly.
We honor that in our own pricing with our own commercial customers, by the way. You know, if the customer's only themselves picking up 100 quid from their customer, we're not charging them 100 quid for the job, right? Like we tend to phrase our pricing as a percentage of whatever it is they're charging or they're charging their customer, right? And that's a generally accepted, fairly typical, normal thing to do in aviation, right? Like when your transatlantic aircraft travels across NATS airspace into French airspace and onwards, every single one of those air traffic control authorities takes a small percentage of the overall value of that flight. That's enshrined in international aviation law. That's how these organizations are funded, give or take some nuances locally. But I think you like I say, we wouldn't expect at all that people charge insane rates. Interestingly, though, when we've offered this feature, and just being completely transparent with everyone, when we've offered this feature to some facilities, they say, well, you know, we want to continue offering a level of service for free, and we want to be able to set an SLA around that so that people can expect that if they approach us and ask for a drone request and we're offering the option to do it for free, then we'll do it for free, but we'll do it within, I don't know, say 7 days or 10 days. But actually they're looking to offer a differentiated service, a bit like the postal service, where you can say, well, actually, if my job is super, super urgent because I've got a client that's told me that I've got to be on site, they phone me at 5 p.m. and I've got to be on site at 9 a.m. tomorrow, clearly that's an important job to the client. Clearly that's an important job to the operator. And if you want me to do that work and prioritize it over everyone else, I'll charge you a bit to process that. So, you know, I think it's interesting that people are looking for opportunities to service drone operators in a way that they haven't done before. But as we're trying to counsel them, and this is not a money printing machine. The purpose of doing this is to open access and to encourage drone flights. And if you are charging too much, no one's going to use it, right?
And that's quite interesting because who can predict the weather 7 days out? So you could take the slow and cheap route, right? But that is annoying because manned aviation is dealt with in real time. So for me, it should be in real time. If it's paid service or not,
general aviation is dealt with typically in real time, but commercial aviation is planned, right?
Well, that's
and what we're talking about here, by the way, is not you trying to predict what day you'd like to do the job on. It's you telling the facility what day you're going to turn up to do your job. Now, every drone operator, right? You don't just rock up randomly to the client and say, I'm doing my job today. You know, you book that in. And what we're saying is whether you're doing that on a Tuesday or a Friday is entirely down to you. It's down to you to arrange it manually with the facility or electronically with the facility. And we've covered many different instances of refunds with people, with facilities, and we have a default refund policy, which kind of can't really be overridden. Like you can supplement it or make it better, but it's a minimum bar. And it kind of says, well, look, if the drone operator requests a change at the last minute, then there is a automatic cancellation fee that applies because the operator of the facility has done the work for you, right? Now, where it gets grey is if it's actually you've cancelled because of a hurricane event or, you know, an act of God, that's an area which is entirely down to the facility to decide whether they want to give you back or that money or not. If they cancel your drone flight for any reason, then there has to be a refund, and we're very clear about that, right? Like, you can't do the work and have someone book in the job and then cancel the request at the last minute and cause a problem. So there is a period of time prior to the flight plan beginning where refunds and cancellations apply, and then there's a period of time where they don't, as you go into that, except obviously in exceptional circumstances.
I think my concern with that is, though, that still stacks with the drone pilot a disadvantage of you saying that if they cancel, they keep your deposit. If you cancel on them, and if they cancel on you, you only get your money back. You should actually, if you had a job cancelled, you might have things booked in where you've got some liability there. So in fact, you're not just owed what you deposit, you owed back some sort of compensation, surely.
Yeah, but you're never going to get back more than you put in. Let's just be completely transparent about that. But equally, if you put something into a mailbox and you pay your postage stamp for that and it doesn't arrive, you're not getting back the value of the item. You're getting back the value of your postage, plus, depending on the service you chose, maybe a capped level of liability, right? So it doesn't matter if you put something in a postbox, pay £1 for the postage, not that you can these days, but £1.50 for a stamp, and you put a £20 note in that, you ain't getting it back if it gets lost, right?
Well, yeah, but that's
because someone's still done the work.
You can have things covered and get back a full refund for the entire value of what you've lost.
So what you're asking for actually is for the facility to offer you an insured option, right? So you're now saying, okay, well, if this job is that important to me and I've got sunk costs, whether or not the job goes ahead, but if it doesn't go ahead, I'm going to lose out because I've had to book a van, or I've had to go buy a special piece of equipment, then perhaps the discussion should be with that facility to say, okay, well, what's it going to cost you to underwrite that, so that if you cancel my policy or you cancel my booking, I get money back. Now, actually, you're not the first person to ask that. And that's another reason why the differentiated, we call them like an a la carte menu, right? Like if you go on to, for instance, some of the facilities on our website today, you'll see the differentiation in services that some of them offer. Some of them only offer one, and some of them offer 2 or 3. We don't cap or limit what they can offer or how they offer it or what they charge. So there's nothing to stop a facility putting it.
With the law, right? So they don't own the airspace of both of them. So this is purely takeoff and landing permissions. Is that correct?
Yep.
Do you make that clear to these people? Are you making it
legally clear? Absolutely legally, crystal clear in our documentation.
So for example, I'm in a council area. I'm going to take off from my garden. I'm not going to have the council come in, where's my money, where's my fee? Because obviously I've taken off from my own property, but you're making it clear that they can only do it for landowners and that's it. That is made perfectly clear.
The technology that we provide is the same technology we provide to people who manage airspace and people who are now setting up land zones, as we call them, right? In the service terms that the customer agrees to, our customer agrees to, we have a very clear differentiation between zones that are in the air and zones that are on the ground, and we're very clear that firstly we don't accept. And this is where I've got to just push back on the whole air map metaphor there, or simile, because completely disagree with that. Because the first thing that we do is we make the landowner give us a warranty, which is a legal construct for you are going to pay us some compensation if you get this wrong, and that we might not stop there. You are going to make a declaration to us that you are the legal landowner associated with the boundaries that you're asking us to establish, and that you are solely responsible for effectively which private individual can come onto that land or not. So we're very clear that what you're controlling there is the ability for someone to access your land physically and to use that land as a takeoff area, or a EV, an extended line of sight spotter area, or a landing area, etc. Whatever you want to use it for, that's what you're getting permission for. What they can't then do is, if you stand in an adjacent car park that isn't owned by that person and fly over it, they've got no right to stop you doing it. But then why would you apply for permission? You're using someone else's car park at that point. You don't need to speak to that landowner.
My only worry with this is I see, if someone has a piece of land and it brings in a lot of income, And there are some areas like that. If you think of your National Trust, for example, I'd fear someone where they set up the system, want to be paid for it, and then if they knew someone was flying over their land from somewhere adjacent, before you know it, they're going to bought themselves a drone shield counter UAS thing, and they're trying to zap your drone out of the sky because you haven't asked permission. Because a lot of these products will be sold and are sold to private individuals or companies. Basically, you can set up a limited company, and before you know it, you can buy some counter drone gear. And although that shouldn't happen,
we do that. But just to be clear, right? What you're straying into is an area of a little bit of fantasy, right? Because it is not possible for any person legally in most Western civilizations to fire an RF interception weapon into the airspace. You have to have a license, right?
Yeah,
so you're not going to get, Bassett House in the middle of Wiltshire firing RF drone shields into the sky. It's just not going to happen.
Well, let's hope not. You say that, but I've spoken to operators that have had GNS jamming against their devices. So it isn't,
which is also illegal, by the way, isn't it?
Yeah, so yeah.
Well, then again, it's from Ofcom. But what we're saying is, by the way, let's just be really clear. Yeah. Whilst I agree that activity is appalling when that's happening without a license, it's not our job to police the license any more than it is yours. But it is illegal for those entities to do that unless they're authorized. If they're also authorized, neither we nor you guys can stop that happening.
No, guys, it's also illegal to block mobile phone signals, and yet there's some pubs where they put it in where they don't want you to be using your phone. These devices, you can buy them off the internet and they install them. So unfortunately, just because something's legal doesn't mean someone doesn't do it.
I know, but if they get caught, they're going to jail, right? Because interfering with a telecommunications network carries a very severe penalty. So, but what bugs me is if you know this, report it, right? And I think people that are doing those things that are illegal should get what's coming to them, right? Like it's not fair or appropriate. But coming back to the central point, opening up access to the land and to airspace to the point of being able to just click a button and then crack on and drone flying is exactly what we're about. We won't tolerate abuse of the service, and there's even a term in our agreement that says you cannot use our service to establish a zone where you reject more flights than you approve, right? You cannot have the intent to begin where you just want to advertise on our service that you're a no-fly zone for drones and you just want to reject everything. Now, there will be rejections, but we're very clear the intent cannot be from the outset to reject more than you approve, right? And we will police that. So again, I think it's very different to that initial reaction that some people have had. I want to say a lot of people are actually very positive, but some people are rightly questioning what we're doing because of the crap that's gone before us effectively. But let's just be really clear, right? We are about opening the airspace to as many people as possible safely. And that includes, even if our customer is paying us, if they're paying us to shut the airspace or to shut the land zone to more people than they're approving, they're going to get booted off the system. That's how it works.
Okay, I mean, I'll add at this point, because obviously I was aware of the AirMap thing at the time, and I even for comedy value sort of put a blog about it and showed how you could just put any area of land, even if you didn't own it, and you could essentially turn it into a no-fly zone. So it is good that you've pointed out that you have to be the approved landowner and so on. So you've got safeguards in there that AirMap didn't have. It's also good to hear that you're not just using it for no-fly zones, because the way AirMap was, I say AirMap, it's pre-AirMap.
You could buy a no-fly zone, right? Like I remember.
Yeah, that's essentially what it's about. It's when it's a Nimbus could stop block above the house. So I appreciate what you're doing here. Isn't that? But I still do worry that the motivation, particularly councils. You see councils like Leeds Council, they're all great when they want, a drone flyer to do some lovely footage that they're going to use, for their social media. But the moment anyone actually wants to try and do a job for a wedding or anything else, it's no, you're not using it. There's just this, they're stuck in the, this, you've got, and you've seen it actually with Newcastle. Newcastle has just had a blanket, and a lot of councils have copied that. There's just that risk-averse nature, because all they see is the newspaper reports and all the negative press. So that all they know about drones is all this misinformation, and they just think, well, it's just far, far safer for us to just ban it outright. So
Yeah.
I think, and then they might think, oh yeah, well, we'll allow it, but we're just going to charge. We're just going to sting them with a high cost. So you've just got until I see this working at a fair price, and then people being happy. I'm initially just going to be suspicious, not because of the way you are, but the way the people that buying the service, what's in their head, and what their motivations are.
I mean, I learned a long time ago that you can't judge whether you're doing a good job or a bad job by whether people are happy. And in fact, you're probably doing a good job if everyone's unhappy, especially in my line of work. But what I think is going to be what I think is going to be an interesting measure is how many land zones are we able to open? How many of those are levying a fee before they become active on our service, and how many of those don't offer a service today, go on to offer either a free one or a paid one. And I think, you'll probably see some press from us over the sort of next year. 12 months, I think, is a reasonable time to kind of collect usage statistics, right? And see what people are doing. But to your point earlier on about kind of not just councils, but stakeholders being sort of influenced by misinformation, I think that's now, whilst it's still happening, and I do still stumble across that, I do think the incidence of misinformation leading people, especially in councils and large estates and that kind of stuff, is less prevalent. But what typically takes prevalence is that's a lot of work. I don't know how to do that, right? So that's why I'm not allowing it today, or I am one person, I have this as my job description, and none of it has to do with drones, and I don't get time to achieve it. So when we go and talk to those facilities, our whole reason d'etre really is to explain to them that, look, these people are not going to go away. Drones are here to stay. They are, many of them, generating income, generating livelihoods, and that's good in this time particularly. But some of these drones are being flown for civic purposes. Sometimes the council themselves are flying drones, and drones also have the power to save lives. Just the other day, Thames Valley Police was in the news for how many drones it has and how many lives it saved using its own drones. So I just think usage will help to normalize it, right? So I think it is incumbent on us to actually use the services, not necessarily just ours, but get flying to make it normalized. And I think in that regard, people will realize it's not an opportunity to go out and go gold digging, because if this person's getting paid 50 quid for a job, he's not got £51 to give you for a permission. So you're not going to get paid, and neither's that person. That the economics of that will kill that dead, right? No one is going to get any money at that point.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So why would a company take your service, say I'm a council, and they say, well, this Altitude Angel service, it can do that, and it means we don't have to answer any emails. Surely you're charging for that. So you're not doing it out of the goodness of your heart. So that means
if any organization, whether it's operating an airspace or a land zone, wishes to sort of enlist on a service and is not charging people to fly, then they can have the basic level of our service to allow them to manually process those requests entirely free of charge, right? So there's no charge to them.
Okay.
Pardon?
Well, that's a good answer. That is reassuring.
So there's no excuse, right? Like, if you're currently doing it and you're doing it by fax or telephone or PO box, and you're not charging, you can now just do it easier, quicker, better for everyone, electronically, completely for free. And we've got facilities that have already enlisted that are doing that. Facilities that then say, I'm getting quite a high volume, I'd like to deal with automation. Well, now we're getting into a point where we're adding extra value to our customer, in this case, the facility. So there's a fee for doing that, right? If they want to get really clever and really smart with different zones and different permissions within the land that they manage or within the airspace that they're responsible for, then there's a fee for that. Guess what? If they want all of the airspace surveillance information that we have, then there is a fee associated with that, because now clearly they're a more safety conscious customer, or maybe they're an airport and they have a regulated duty to make sure that they're being extra careful. So there are fees for the addition of services. And if you go back, I remember being on a podcast here years ago, and I'm sure someone in the comments will probably try and find it and replay it at some point. But I remember saying, look, if you're going to charge anyone for anything, then the basic starting point should be that they get something that they couldn't otherwise have, right? It should be valuable. This is why I don't like fees for drone registration, for instance, right? Because you get nothing for it. You get absolutely nothing. You don't even get a cool app that you can use that only you can use. You don't get
something.
turnaround times, right? Like you need something for the service you're paying.
You do get something. You do get something, Richard. You admit liability for flying a drone. That's what that £10 does. Nothing more, nothing less.
I was going to be even more sarcastic and say you get a knock on the door from a police interrogating you the moment any drone seen near an airport because you're on the database.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's a different kind of noise. We've even opened that one before, I think, as a group, and we've told you kind of how we tend to deal with those requests, which fortunately we don't seem to get too many of anymore. But look, I understand people's concerns, and I do think it's fair because overall the community as a whole, whether it's recreational or commercial, has had a pretty tough time, particularly in the press. It's all very sensational, isn't it, when a drone does something it shouldn't do. But ultimately, I do think the Drones for Good story is winning out. Every chance that we get in every forum that we're in, both domestic and abroad, we are touting what drones can do for people. We have stood up for that routinely. And all we care about is opening access to as many people as possible to this fantastic technology, right? So I have to go back and say, well, some people are deriving value from that drone operation, and other people clearly in the chain will want something out of that, right? But equally, if they are, I love that, recreational.
Yes.
If you're deriving value from something, and then you're getting access to something you couldn't otherwise have, to have the expectation that should be for free, unless it's a government facility or a regulated facility, I just don't see it happening. I mean, councils typically charge you to park on their land these days, right? Often eye-watering rates, if I might add. But nothing is free typically. And you don't get a distinction, right? If you're there at the park and you're trying to park your car and you're just trying to have a picnic with your family, or you're there because you've got a van full of tools and you're going to do a job, everyone pays the same fee. But so I do at least think, at least in our service, someone can say if they're doing a recreational flight, or they're doing, I might have to add a third option, recreational. But you're doing a recreational flight or you're doing a commercial flight, it's possible for our customers to set up a different fee or no fee for recreational and a fee for commercial, so that they can choose how best to service the requests that they're generally receiving. And remember, they're all local requests, right? To them, they'll know what's valuable to their community, and if they want to offer value, they're going to have to do it at a reasonable rate, particularly, as you say, Ian, if there is an adjacent landowner who is on the system, then why not just go there if it's cheaper? Because that's how it will work, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's like one good thing as well. It would put competition in. So if someone was being greedy, you could just then set on next door and do it for half the price.
Yeah.
I am a little concerned with analogies, though, in that when we talk about, general aviation and they pay, a lot of drones aren't used like flying craft, because when you do general aviation, you're flying great distances. You may even be moving stuff, to make a living. Where a lot of drone use actually is very mundane. It's very low paid. It's, if you're going up and you're doing a roofing stuff, you're not really making much use of the airspace. You're basically just getting someone that's bigger than a ladder to go over a house. And a lot of operators are out there doing jobs like that. They're not all BV loss and putting, they're not really a very good equivalence to talking about the way wider aviation works. And also when we talk about a council and say a park and saying we're charging, at the same time, if I want to go down to a park and play a game of football and take a ball down there, kick it about, I'm never going to be charged. And the worry would be, oh yeah, but this guy drone later future, they might say, well, yeah, it's recreational, but solid, we'll charge him a £5. And that just worries me when you separate a hobby where you can charge for it and someone else can have a completely different hobby and it's never going to have a fee. So I just think this, there are, it'll depend. We see the way councils are with cars. They see them as a cash cow, and every opportunity is to put a fee on it, they will do so. And unfortunately, you know, there will be the temptation with some councils to say, you know, let's milk this for all we can, and that's what worries me. So I appreciate
Well,
all
if you say,
what you've done.
I think you're right. Like I think money is a motivator for a lot of people, right? And councils are cash strapped, and everyone, as a as a local council resident, as we all are, we all have high expectations of our council to provide services, but we don't like paying more in tax. And I get that, and that's a valid argument. But where I think the argument differs slightly is, as I say, go back to cars as cash cows. Car parks don't differentiate for why you use them, right? It's just however long you're there. So you could be parking there for 20 minutes, paying £2 and signing £1 million deal in a coffee shop with a businessman, or you could be having a picnic. You're paying the same rate. At least with this type of system, what we're actually trying to achieve is opening up something which is currently not available, or available in an extremely cumbersome, not particularly useful or discoverable way, and then giving the facility the opportunity to decide what they want to do, right? And if money is the motivator for them and they set that tariff too high, no one's going to fly there. So they're not going to make any, and therefore they're going to have to lower the tariff. So I think it will be an interesting kind of watch and wait type system. And we've had those discussions internally. Some zones will get this wrong, right? Some will get it right. And I think the majority will be probably somewhere in between, where they're just trying to be fair, right? They're just trying to cover their costs and not effectively rinse people for anything that they possibly can. The majority of the landowners that we've spoken to are quite keen to understand, because they've maybe been approached once or twice in the past, and maybe they've got a drone themselves and they fly for fun, but they can recognize that they own, several hectares of land, and it's right adjacent to this particular thing that lots of people keep asking them about, and they're trying to figure out, well, I don't have staff on my perimeter, right? I'm just a private landowner. How do I have assurance that if I'm going to authorize someone to just come on my land, that they're actually allowed to be there? I don't necessarily want to say no, but I just have no way to say yes today. So I think all the concerns are valid. I can't argue with them. I'm just trying to provide additional context, really. I don't see the negative side kind of really bearing out in commercial conversations that we're having on any front. And as I say, if people do want to use the service primarily as a means of rejection, then A, they're breaking the terms of service and will disconnect that service. But B, we've made it very clear in the onboarding process that that's not what they're entitled to do with our tools either. Perhaps they'll have to go back to AirMap and buy a no-fly zone.
Well, yes, I knew this would be a popular topic when I saw that press release, and that's why I invited you last week. And you shied away. You chickened out and waited a week to come back with your reasonable answers, because you were in a hot field setting up towers for the the Arrow setup in your saw away 32-degree heat over there, I believe, last week. But
it was a little hot. I felt really bad for the crew.
We did you stand in an air-conditioned room?
And I was in the shade of the van, sipping cocktails, looking out for the workers.
I thought that's how it would probably look. Yes. Well, just real quickly, because I do want to get on to the because we've gone 38 minutes there, just on that first bit.
Just grilling me, no, thanks for that.
Yeah, just grilling you. Yeah, so I just want to grill you just a little bit more, and then I want to get on to that new DTI thing and some other things about those towers. So where are you at with that? How many are up there, and are we going to be seeing a huge BVLOS flight at Farnborough next year, going a long way, not just the 20 Ks that the French are doing for Paris Air Show or whatever it is? What are we going to see next year?
Interesting that you bring up Farnborough, and I might come back to that. But look, I think as we've said before, the end of the Skyway project is July 2024, and we're on track to meet our requirements to the CAA. Hopefully the CAA is on track to meet their requirements from us. As everyone that's had interactions with the CAA knows, it can be a little mysterious at times, but my team meets with the CAA and the rest of the consortium partners meet with the CAA, I think, pretty much on a weekly basis. In terms of the infrastructure rollout, that's actually on track despite a little bit of an initial setback, because we do these towers in batches. We have and then we also have phases. So we have like a survey phase, and you can be on track with all of that. You can be on track with all of your building, but then we have a deployment phase, and then something awkward can occur, right? A landowner might not be there that when you turn up with a 30-meter mast, or actually the one part that you really need from a supplier just isn't available. So we've had a few setbacks with physical access ourselves to some of these sites, but happy to report that we're on track now, and we're almost complete with our Coventry Rugby sections. So that's about 5 towers, I think, if I'm not mistaken. We've now got 3 down in the south end of the corridor in Berkshire. So that's Reading, Thiel, and sort of Green Park business estate area, if people know those areas. And what we're doing is a lot like people when they build tunnels. They typically don't just drill a tunnel all the way out to, say, France. They start on the French side and they start on the English side, and they try and meet in the middle. That's effectively what we're doing with Skyway. So we're starting in 2 locations and then winding down to meet in the middle. Hopefully by the end of Q1 next year is when we want to be done with all the building, because obviously that time frame is coming up to springtime, and then we can get start doing some more serious flying at that point because the weather's a little bit better. So we are going to go into a quiet period from flying, probably end of October, early November. But then all we do is we switch into testing of the sensors and efficacy of the sensors with different GA aircraft, right? And it also helps us when, believe it or not, when the weather is really, really poor and visibility is really poor. That's actually when we can collect some of our best evidence, because we do want to know how the system performs when the weather's not particularly great. So it's moving. If I'm completely honest, it's not moving as fast as I'd like, and not necessarily every party is fully, shall we say, committed to the cause. There are commitments that some parties just won't give. But look, CAA have said this is a project that they're really keen to back. The aviation minister turned around and has backed it. DFT have backed it. In fact, we're doing a demonstration to DFT and to MOD Friday. So it's going to be, I think, a technology that everyone wants to see. And even, I think BBC covered some news, didn't they? Was it Friday?
I don't know.
They covered some news up north. There was a temporary restricted area put forward by Appian and Skyports, right? And I think the BBC headline was something along the lines of, it's a land grab for the air.
Yeah.
And I saw this and I just thought, why? There's like one drone bimbling around in here, right? And we've just taken all of this airspace out of operation. Skyway completely doesn't require that. You could have 1,000 drones in that zone and nobody need change what they're otherwise doing. So I don't really see any other credible solutions that people are putting forwards. And if we want scalable beyond line of sight operations, nobody, I think even probably Appian and Skyports as well, without speaking to them, nobody wants temporary restricted areas. It's a waste of resource. So, hopefully Skyway opens it up.
You're pulling in the data. So are you beginning to see what I want to see? Yeah, what to do on tower. So you're beginning to see value in the data you're pulling from the towers that are there already. Is it perhaps changing your opinion of what it'll end up? Has it changed your opinion of what it might all end up looking like in the end?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily in terms of what we expect the outcome to change. We don't expect the outcome to change, but certainly what we've learned about the airspace and what's in it is different to what our expectations or even some of our stakeholders had as an expectation. Now, everything that we're doing right now is preliminary. So if you take it with a pinch of salt, we'll always confirm this later. But, our view of the airspace just in the Berkshire area alone is that on a typical day, between 30 and 50% of what is traveling through that airspace is not electronically conspicuous, right? And that's a very significant statement, because most people hold the view that the majority of air traffic is. Now, it might be that if you step back on a national scale and look at all aircraft in transit, the majority of aircraft are conspicuous. But in this particular area where we've got a focus of sensors looking up and scanning the horizon, that's not the case. And it kind of makes the case for a technology which is passive and able to observe what's occurring, just like a human does. The second thing we learned was we were very conservative with what we thought would be the applicable radius for the sense, our weakest sensor, which is our optical systems. Whilst we're not planning to change what we're applying to the CAA from our sort of 8 to 10 kilometer range, what we have seen is that on a clear day, we can get 3 to 5 times what we were anticipating quite well. We haven't got the evidence yet to fully back that up because we haven't tested empirically to that distance, but our early observations at that distance is much more surprising than we thought. So, it might be that one of the outcomes in the period following Skyway, the 6 to 12 months following that actually we work out we don't need as much ground infrastructure, but we can cover a much larger area, which means the costs to rolling it out and supporting it are lower, and therefore any subsequent costs to fly, over that long distance will be a lot lower too. So yeah, there are some early interesting insights already, and we're already trying to figure out what do we collect and what do we make public and how will it help and who should see it, etc.
I found the optical thing interesting. It's a shame we don't have Giles York ever on this show, who thinks that you can't video a drone past 500 meters.
Well, he might be right, because we don't use the cameras for drones, FYI. Like unless it's a huge drone, we're not really going to be looking for it. The principal purpose of our camera systems are to spot GA, but also things like hang gliders, balloons, paragliders, parachutists, that kind of stuff. They're not looking for the Mavic Mini. We also found that, sorry, what was that?
No, I was just saying that'd be a great
Good
segue,
segue.
into talking about the Mavic Mini. Hello to
Yeah.
Chris, and I haven't said happy birthday to Spaffer up there either. Happy birthday, Ian. I should have said
Happy
that earlier.
birthday.
That was my fault. And Bruce is keeping quiet, as the comments have been noting. And Chris Morecambe Bay, people of Morecambe, salutations. Chris is having problems with this temporary danger areas and all that sort of thing. So other paramotorists are the most unpredictable. Well, perhaps. Maybe, I don't know.
I've got a question for Richard,
Go on, mate.
because you've got to ask the awkward questions. So, how are you finding getting the OSC to fly inside your corridors? Because everyone else enjoys dealing with the CAA. How long has it taken, and what aircraft can you fly BVLOS inside your corridors? Are you multi-rotor? Are you VTOLs? Can you give us kind of anything that what kind?
Well, I can tell you what's in the public domain, right? Like, firstly, we enjoy working with the CAA the same way everyone else does. But I would say, there are very supportive, strong characters in the CAA that see the benefit in what we're offering and want to achieve it. But one of the big challenges when you approach a regulator and you say, I would like to do something that you currently have no regulatory pathway to assure or provide, which is what our original request was, right? We want to do autonomous BVLOS, please make it safe, give us a certificate. There's no way to achieve that. So we were very clear that what we wanted to do was come up with a system which was effectively a compromise, right? Not on safety, certainly not on safety, but was a compromise that said, okay, well, we want future stuff. We can't have that. You haven't got any regulatory instruments appropriate to enable that. So what we will do is find a way to make the use of Skyway incidental to what a drone operator otherwise would have to do to go and convince you to get BVLOS. And it so happens that to go and do BVLOS routine in this country, like others, is quite hard, but you have to come up with an answer for how you're going to mitigate the risk of collision, right? So what we're doing is we are producing a series of model texts that we are working extremely hard with the CAA to recognize when they see that text in an operator's OSC, that they will understand what that what that system gives them, because they'll be able to turn around and the OSC reference bookcase of life and pull off the arrow system and go, oh, this is how this works. Okay, so when Mark tells me or Ian tells me that they want to use the arrow system in this way, that's compliant with the technical specification, happy days. Or actually, no, you've not implemented that into your operational procedures the way that the technology was designed. So no, you can't have your operating permission. So we're not asking the regulator actually to approve the service. What we're actually saying is recognize the service and allow the service to be used. What we're investing in then is, I think it's volume 2 in the OSC. I can't quite remember, but it's basically kind of, we're going to write an entire OSC, and then we're going to open source bits of that OSC that you would have to incorporate into your OSC to then go BVLOS. So it's a tough order.
So that's interesting. So it's like volumes 2 and 3. You're probably talking about that, because what would be nice would be for a PDRA to appear. So PDRA 03, 05, whatever. The CA says, right, this is what you have to do to be able to fly in your corridor, instead of having to go through a scratch write. Because if you do a scratch write for an OSC, it can cost you thousands, and it will cost you months to get. The CA is, well, they're very good, and there's some great people there. There's no denying that at all. There's some nice people there. I've met a few of them. The kicker is the CAA works like treacle. That's just the way it is.
I think all government works like treacle, right? Or
it does, which is frustrating.
But they want it to happen, right? I think they recognise, at least, having spoken with the CAA at length and sat down with the executives at the CAA, they know that they need to change, and they want to change, and they know they've got inertia, but they also know that they can't write laws, right? That takes time. So they also don't have evidence and tools that they need, and Skyway is a way to help them achieve that. So as I say, what I think is going to happen, in July 2024 is we will be successful in getting with the CAA I'm going to say approvals with a small a, because it's not a type of approval, it's not a type approval, etc. But we get that assurance from the CAA that when they see an operator using this service, that they are going to be able to understand what that means, and therefore enable that operator to go BVLOS with less concern, right? Or less concern for how they're going to separate, etc., because they know how that's going to be handled. What we are not trying to do as a company, and I also want to be really clear about this, is you're not going to be able to turn up to altidanger.com, put in a credit card, and become a certified drone operator instantaneously that can then go BVLOS, right? You still have to be a proper bona fide operator. You probably need to have been operating for a while before the CAA would even consider allowing you to do BVLOS. You've got to have something which is airworthy, and we don't tell you what that is. And that hence why when you ask about multi-rotor or fixed wing, etc., you won't find our service differentiating from you in any way other than how it treats you when it's giving you avoidance instructions, right? Like the obvious one just being, it's not going to tell you to stop if you're a fixed wing aircraft. It's going to tell you to loiter, or it's going to tell you to go to a predefined point that you've told us you're happy to go to if there is a risk in this zone. So it is I hate to use the term, it's a stepping stone. It's not gone as far as I would have enjoyed, and I think the community would have really, really enjoyed, because we've got companies that want to do incredible life-saving things with drones and can't because the policy isn't there yet. And I hate the fact that policy causes patients to lose their lives. Like, that's ridiculous, right? But I understand and I respect that those laws and those policies exist. It's our job to transition, and that's what we've always tried to do as a company, right? Anyone can sell the picture of the future, but someone's got to walk the walk, stepping stone by stepping stone. And I think this is probably the best that we can achieve in the UK. The FAA did something rather unexpected, didn't they? I think if you guys were following that news, they certified, I think, Big Sea, a ground-based detect and avoid solution, and recognized that, but stopped short of actually saying whether it was proprietary for the use of the company that deployed it and is still existing in a TRA or some other restricted airspace. but it's a very meaningful move by the FAA to say, well, we're gonna start writing regs for this stuff, right? And I hope the CAA here see that as a bit of an opportunity to really get, if they're not entirely focused on it, to really put more attention on it.
A quick geeky question for you, which is probably too early for you to have an answer for, but I just thought I'd ask anyway. Because obviously the Arrow sensors, it's essentially a mast with counter drone sensors on there, so it's essentially there to detect and also to detect normal GA. Have you found, and obviously I'm not expecting to name anyone, I'm just as a curiosity from your testing already, have you found any sensors that haven't performed as well as you would like, so you're thinking of swapping stuff out or have swapped it out already?
Yes. Enigmatically, yes. Like I think there is, in the drone industry as a whole, there's a lot of hyperbole, right? And we've always, as a company, we've tried to steer clear of that. And I hope you guys, please, and I'm saying this in front of all of YouTube for all eternity, hold us to account if you think we're never doing that, because I think that's key to an organization's DNA, right? You've got to be true to it, otherwise your word doesn't mean anything. But getting back to the point, in counter UAS, I've seen so much snake oil, and you do get reeled into it, right? You're kind of like, oh wow, you've got 100% coverage of everything out to 1 million kilometers. Yes, I'll buy one of those. But actually, what we have discovered is turning around to people and saying, well, we've got 6 towers right now that we could test these on. Can I have a demo unit, please? Suddenly, that's an immediate sand sifter, right? That's like, oh, okay, you haven't got one, or no, it's £1 million just to trial. And we're like, okay, well, clearly you don't stand by the efficacy of that. But there are some organizations that have sent us evaluation units, some we've had to pay for, and you put them on the towers and you're pleasantly surprised. Like, they don't. And what I will say is the hypothesis we had going in all along was that we won't find one sensor that's good for everything. And that's definitely held true. Our current complement of sensors is about 3 different counter UAS systems. And we get a pretty good mix. But what we've not completed is our own empirical testing, where we know exactly the different types of aircraft or where they were. We've flown this calibration pattern, and we can guarantee that we can see X% of these aircraft with that complement of sensors. But our anecdotal testing, when we're doing our calibration flights and our test flights and our partners are flying, is usually pretty clear quite quickly what systems are going to be worth investing in. But systems also break down into passive and active, right? And what we found is passive sensors as a group just suffer more than any active system does. We don't like active systems in the sense that they're quite expensive, and they're also very, very difficult to get permissions to use, because obviously if you're emitting anything into the airspace, into the electromagnetic spectrum, you need licenses and permissions and consultations, which kind of defeats the purpose for us. So we like the passive systems, but there's a hybrid sensors which kind of understand the radio signals that they're seeing and decrypt them. Right, so they almost, I guess it's like hacking into the control signal, right? And actually, at that point, it's a passive system, but it's also intelligent because it understands the packets it's receiving. It goes, okay, here's the latitude and longitude of the drone, because the drone is telling me that is where it is. So those systems tend to be quite an interesting blend, because they tend to be about the same cost as the passive systems. They, however, suffer from selectivity. If the developer of those systems has only witnessed 30 makes and models of drones, or more specifically radio packages for control, then that's all they can detect. Everything else is blind. So I say it is a layered approach, but it's definitely held true. There is just not one good system. And I probably get every 2 weeks, some random manufacturer pops up and says, I've just built some kind of radar solution, insert fancy name, probably including the word Sky somewhere, and you should buy it immediately because I've got a photo of it doing something for NATO in a trial somewhere, and therefore it's going to be perfect in a densely populated urban environment where anybody can put anything.
Well, just following on from this with something you've mentioned, and I'll be careful what I say, but
I think I know what you're going
One
to say.
thing that is noticeable, and it's noticeable even if you just look at the demos that are put online from a lot of the counter drone systems, but there are counter drone providers that do demos for like an airport or whatever when they're trying to sell the gear. And what you notice is they almost always use an Inspire or that kind of class. So you're saying, pick a large drone, or pick a drone that transmits aeroscope packets. So you're basically making a test that will always pass. And same, you see the Phantom, it's used a lot as well. And for some reason, every time a GNSS jammer's put at them, they just land straight down on the ground like they just wouldn't do unless you told it to land on the ground. You know, you never see anything doing a return to home and hitting someone on the way back and falling to the ground. Everything's just very much presented in a way that just wouldn't be the true outcome if you then went out and bought that and applied it as you told it can be applied.
No, I agree with you. Again, we don't do the sort of counter element, right? Like we use the systems for their surveillance component, and we don't actually have any systems which have a kind of effector capability, right, on the towers. But I've certainly seen demonstrations myself, pretty much at airports, right, where the company turns up with the shiny pre-prepared rogue drone that's probably, painted with reflective materials or something. Like it's usually quite big. It's usually something like an Inspire, as you say. One of the things we do, by the way, when we test our drones, we've got a cheap 90-pound drone that we use because it's not conforming to any known standard. We have our sort of fixed wing survey vehicle we use, which was actually built by it's a 3D XR system, I think. So I think that's using a Cube autopilot. You guys will don't get to fly it, so I don't know. And then we have a couple of different sort of multi-rotors, hexcopters in between that we use just for our own purposes. But then our partners have got, frankly, much better and much more reminiscent of the kind of operator type drones that we're looking to see on the network. And a lot of systems just don't detect most things. The passive systems as well, and there I think I might be wrong. Someone on my own company will probably email me tomorrow and tell me I told a vicious lie online, but I think it's probably five different passive five passive systems that we've seen and tested, and most of them suffer from false classification rather than not seeing something quite often. So things like dash cams happen quite significantly. People, like most modern cars, most modern EVs have some kind of Wi-Fi point on board. So it picks those up when they're driving past, and it can't really differentiate between that and the signal because it's all in the ISM waveband. So they all struggle, but they are really valuable tools, but they don't all cut equal.
Now let's jump a little. We've gone over the hour here. Let's jump onto this new DJI thing that people are getting excited about. We've seen the images, we've seen the price, and we've seen it's got remote ID. And is it really going to be much better than all the others, or is it just this Christmas's one, Ian?
It's got rear object sensors, 04, and 4K 100. It's a minor bump on the Mini 3 Pro. I actually think, and sorry if people can hear noise, I started a 3D print and not anticipating how loud that printer actually is. But I wouldn't be convinced if DJI are doing this more. They're transitioning to a new RF chipset. So I do wonder how much of the original they have left. And are they now going to start working their way through all of the models with pretty light upgrades? There is technically no reason they can't just do a change on the models and now say, the new ones are going to come with 04 instead of 03. But they do they don't miss an opportunity to do a bit of a marketing push. And that's what it is. It looks pretty similar, 4K 100. Don't really know who needs 100 frames a second in cinematic footage. Actually, you always want the low frame rates, not the high frame rates.
Oh
Predominantly.
no, there's the high frame rates are useful if you want a lot of slow-mo, which is I think quite missed.
Yeah.
And if you're doing some motion tracking, so if you want to put elements in afterwards and track them, and it's also useful for gyroflow, which isn't so relevant with that particular.
It isn't on that, and
there
the
are
other
some use cases.
Yeah, but the problem is on such a small sensor, has such a high shutter speed, you're going to have so little light reaching that sensor. You're swiping that sensor so fast, you're probably going to jack the ISO through the roof, and it's going to be noisy as crap. And that's it's okay on something with plenty of glass to get the light through, but on a drone of a sensor of that small, and that's the problem with the GoPros, isn't it, Ian? It's the same with all of this small stuff. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, if you were thinking about buying the 3, wait for the 4. It's that simple. I don't see 4 users in today's big iPhone day, ironically, and it's a very similar situation. I've just been looking at the new iPhone that's launched. Mine's now 2 years old, and I'm even looking at this going, there's nothing other than actually having a USB-C port, which means I don't have to bring 2 cables with me. That's about the only benefit. So it's not really exciting, but it's also it's the iPhone 14 is probably the right term to use.
Yeah, no, fair play. And I did like the AS. Nobody else. I don't understand why all these leakers haven't said, look, it's got RID. But then also, I've lost the will to live a little bit on the current RID story.
Yeah.
Has it really been delayed? Or, I'm hearing 1 week. That's generous, eh? I like that. To the 23rd of September, I'm hearing. So I don't know. Have you been keeping up with it, Bruce?
Yeah, there's no official announcement yet. In fact, I saw Brendan on Twitter this morning exclaiming, it's only 3 days and they haven't told us anything, which is fair enough too. People need to plan. If they're going to say we're not going to extend it, or we're going to give relief, or exactly what form the relief takes, that can alter, because remember, all 107 operators have to have it on every drone, and a lot of them will have legacy drones that don't have it. So people can't plan their business because the FAA is going to leave it till the very last minute to tell them what they can do, what they can't do. It's lunacy. It's not like they haven't known that there was going to be a problem. Not like they haven't consulted with the industry to find out how things are going. I really despair. The FAA is not going to get compliance because everyone's lost respect for this whole thing. Yeah. The first part of the rule was stuffed up and had to be extended by 3 months. This part's been stuffed up. It shows that we have a group of people who are dealing with an industry and a community with which they do not consult, and the outcomes can only be bad. So I'm constantly keeping an eye out, but nothing has been said yet. And as I say, it's only 3 days until the 16th.
Well, just think here, the CA still do mention remote ID. So they just released one of their consultation results. They still bang on about remote ID for us. But if RCA is not paying attention to how the FAA have screwed this up and how easy it is to spoof remote ID, to go down the road would be very foolish. I just hope our CAA have got a bit more about them and actually ditch remote ID. That's not worth anything to anyone. Network ID is pay to fly. That's a bad idea again. That's not worth anything to anyone. Just bring in electronic conspicuousy for everything in the air. You roll it out to manned aviation first because there's less of them. So general aviation, paramotors, everything else, get manned aviation on it because they need it for safety first, because they just hit each other and fall out the sky or whatever. Get it to them first, and then when that's proven, you roll it out to the rest of us, where there's 200,000 of us. We're then the biggest user, but you've got to do the small people first so we can see them to avoid them first.
Yeah, but we don't.
In America,
so we're the bad guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, what they should be doing in the States, in 2016, the FAA gave relief in the form of a rebate for people who had to fit ADS-B to their aircraft. In New Zealand, there was a $2,500 rebate. I think most countries have offered a rebate for
UK
people who are
has,
fitting
yeah.
electronic security. Now, the FAA said these remote ID modules will be $50. Turns out they're 2 to 3 times that price. So why do people say, look, we demand that you give us the $50 difference. You've done it with manned aviation. You want our compliance. You have to come along. You've stuffed it up so bad. We want $50 for every remote ID module we buy. Where are people? They're just sitting on their bums going, oh, no one's getting organized and pushing back.
There was another, I need to jump in with this because there was another comedy element to this, and we'll have to see how this pans out. But one problem you've got with components, when you're taking your legacy drone and trying to upgrade it, there's a lot of unpredictability when you start sticking in new components, especially ones that transmit. They can actually create noise. You'll have people that stick it in and then stick it above their GPS unit, and it's going to lose and it's going to crash. But already there was a Phantom where someone had fit it, and it did a flyaway and it crashed. So it had introduced some sort of interference. So it'll be interesting to see if that was just some sort of freak one-off, or people are going to have problems integrating it into existing drones.
But that's easy to fix. You just have to send it off to approved maintenance organization for an authorized installation of your $50 thing that then costs you $5,000 to get it signed off. It's a simple fix. It's easy to fix.
You can imagine, you go model flying. So let's forget the drones for a second. You go down to your model flying site and, you take 5 or 6 models with you. If you have to put one in each aircraft, that's annoying, but
no, you don't.
It's bad enough. You just have to have the one, right? So I've got one, let's say I've got one unit. However, the problem is I've put my planes together. They're all, I've put my wings on, I put everything together. It's taken me 15 minutes per aircraft. And now I've got this stupid bloody thing that I have to somehow go, oh, crap. Do you know what? Chuck that away. I'm just going to fly. Sod it.
Well, Ian did
compliance
send me
will be
a
low.
video. Yeah, he sent me a video earlier of a chap explaining that, in fact, it's the forward push of the remote implants for people. So obviously, that's what this remote ID really is. But I didn't think it was going to go as spectacularly badly as this.
I did.
Bring up to the 16. I was horrified that that people got very excited that the FAA were going to announce at the Commercial UAV Expo what was going on. It's like, hang on a minute, you can't announce something so important to a huge community on a day. I think they thought better of doing it on that day because it was terrible. Because it was a heck of a incentive or a heck of a thing for that exhibition if they really did that. And that's not how you do things. You don't communicate to a large community via a pay to go and see trade show. It's not cool, not cricket.
No. And I see also there's still some confusion around whether Part 107 operators need to have standard remote ID or broadcast. The FAA sent conflicting advice on whether they need full standard, because if you have to put standard remote ID on a legacy drone, that is a huge task. It's not just a module. You've got to have some way of reporting the operator's live location through that system. So it's not a simple thing to do. But the FAA, Kevin Morris has said one thing, the FAA officially said something else, and then Geeks Van has been told one thing, and other people have been told other things. It's just a complete fiasco from start to finish. And perhaps the reason they haven't made an announcement is they don't really know what to say because they just don't know what they're doing.
Left hand, right hand. Yes.
Yeah, it's designed to fail. It's this malicious compliance. It's the only thing I can think of. They can't be that incompetent. It must be malicious compliance. They're just thumbing their nose at Congress and saying, "You told us to do it. We're going to do it in the most ridiculous way possible, so nobody can comply, and we're going to make you look stupid." And that's what they're doing.
But the ridiculous thing, high horse, I am climbing on it. But the ridiculous thing is it doesn't serve safety in any way. It doesn't improve aviation safety for GA, for airliners, for us. It has no bloody practical use. So, go on.
It is the most useless system going, isn't it?
Yeah, they haven't claimed safety, though. They've claimed security. This is all about security now because bad actors want to do bad things. But again, it's not even doing that. If it's about security, who gives a damn if you're flying a drone on your own property without remote ID? Why do you have to have it on your own property? Because you don't pose a threat to anybody when you're doing that if you're flying within your own boundaries. So it it is a stupid system thought up by people who don't know anything about what they're doing to give the illusion that they're doing something. Because we know all these attacks with drones on the US mainland, the recreational moderated drones that have been used, it has to stop. It has to stop. And this is how they're going to do it.
You see, now, if you said to me, it's about security, I would just go, hang on a minute. We can already get modules that spoof the signal, right? You can already get spoofing units, right? So I would be mean. And the easy way to be mean is you just get a fixed wing aircraft. I could put 3 modules in it, all spoofing, all giving out false information. I could just chuck it on a waypoint mission and secure it, and you could send all security running around the place trying to find 3 drones that don't exist, with the one in the air not transmitting its location at all, because it's easy to spoof.
And in the meantime, the bad actor rolls up in a U-Haul truck full of fertilizer and diesel oil, blows something up.
Plants, because I don't want to get banned, and plant stuff.
But you know, that's how simple it is. If you wanted to cause a security nightmare, wait for RID to come in, just rig a fixed wing on a mission, put 3 units in its spoofing, not with the aircraft's real location, and you would have a field day watching the police trying to run around and catch this aircraft, because it'll be up there for a good hour and a half, and it will just waste their time.
I think there might be one positive thing that's coming out of this fiasco, and that is that perhaps the community finally is beginning to wake up to the fact that things are being done in their name that they're looking the other way and not paying attention for. Perhaps enough people are going to start paying more attention to what regulators, or particularly UAM and AAM companies, are pushing for in airspace, and to knock the hobby out of the way. I hope, but maybe not. Maybe everyone will go, RID will fall away and everyone will go back to sleep. I don't know.
I'm hoping physics will play a part on the UAM side. I think physics is the biggest enemy right now for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else have we seen, gang, this week? Oh, I know. I need to ask the birthday boy. Have we had any developments on the? Or have I started saying something I shouldn't mention?
I think I've not been told I can't speak about it yet, but the Gatwick thing's still a thing in progress, but hence my use of the word SPAF. From this day forth, I would suggest that everybody that's watching this makes more use of the word SPAF. It is a genuine English word, and I've managed to use it today.
Oldie English, yes, oldie English.
Yeah, I've managed to use this legitimately in a legal retort, so it is now in a document that will hopefully be public record and be there for historians to read in the future, and hopefully have a bit of a giggle at.
I look forward to that episode of Time Team in 2100 and whatever. The great incident. Yes. I think it's some of the strings of that are connecting and pulling on the wrong or the right people, I suppose. As they say, if you're subject to a lot of, if you're facing lots of flack, then you're over the target. And I think that's the position you find yourself in now, Ian, without saying too much. I think you are.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing is, and obviously thanks to you as well, Gary, that a lot of people have sort of helped out and put their voice at the side of mine, and sort of backed up sort of my competency on the matter, and also putting their own views forward, which all helps. I mean, at the end of the day, whether this set of legal issues goes in my favour or not, I'm kind of less bothered about that now, in that it's, you know, I've gone there, I've done it, I've tried, other people have come in and have done their bit, you know, the effort's being put in, what happens, and but you know, I'm not going to cry about it at the end. It's, you know, it's been a good experience in of itself. It's sent me back over information I've held and information other people have held, and just it set things even straighter in my mind about things. We need to go over and you have to justify it, and then you've got someone chipping away and going, no, and I'm going, oh, hang on a minute, You suddenly realise how strong the argument is, and how strong. At the end of the day, you can't argue against facts. Facts are facts. So
Yeah.
we'll see what
Yeah.
comes of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's on your I know. I'll go around the thing before around the clock, as it were, before we go. I've been playing with that drone light show software, Mark. I see what you mean, and in Blender, it's a little bit confusing, but I'm coming to the conclusion that probably about 1,000 drones is about what you need to make lots and lots and lots of very compelling images. I see 300 swarms, I see 100 swarms, but 1,000, I can start making pretty pictures.
Well, yeah. The more drones, the better the resolution in the sky.
Absolutely.
If you've enjoyed playing with Blender, have you used it before?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you know how to use it, someone did a great tutorial video I have now, and I'm learning what I can from Blender, because it's your muscle memory, remembering all to how to do stuff, and it's really interesting.
It's a very, very steep mountain to climb. Very, very steep mountain. I keep going. I keep starting it. I keep using it for a job that I need for 3D printing job, or for a sculpting job for Sarah, and then I don't touch it again for a year or 18 months, and I've completely forgotten. And it's gone through 90 different more versions, and anyway, but it is very powerful, and for the price, I can't really complain.
No,
You can't really complain. And then Ian, go on, mate.
I'll send you a link. I'll send you an important link.
All right, good. T-shirt ideas. Shush, be very quiet. I'm speaking of remote IDs.
Yeah, you kids in your Blender. I come from the days when Povray was the 3D rendering thing. Povray, everything was typed in. You didn't have your GUIs. It was great.
Yes. Well, that's FreeCAD. You can do everything with a spreadsheet. That's quite interesting. But that's a different kettle of ball games altogether. Now, Ian, you other Ian there in the Welsh one, you rather, we spoke last week about load shedding, and here it is again, and then you promptly put out a video on a great big battery pack that would have done me very well. So I took that rather personally, actually. You were just having a pop. So what have you got go on the table there? What are we going to see next?
I don't think there'll be any more power supply videos. The hate I got on that video is unbelievable. My favorite comment is, I'd review a burger if I got it for free.
I saw that comment, and I don't know how Bruce and Turbo Brush and Amiga. I know what you mean, Brandon.
It's annoying and frustrating, because they are very relevant tools today, and I actually use them all the time. I leave one in the back of the car permanently. And actually, I travel a lot for work, and actually they're even handy to have in the car for charging the laptop when you're driving. Because if you flatten the bloody thing, you're always trying to find a plug socket or something. So when you're driving, just plug it in and let it bloody charge. And they're really handy, though, for FPV, because yes, you can build battery packs cheaper if you want to build one. You can go and buy a big LiPo, but with the big LiPo comes a lot of hassle. What's nice about these things is, yes, they're expensive, but they are a very good option. Now, that is a big unit. It's a 1 kilowatt battery, 1,152 watt hours, 1,700 watts. It's actually 2,700 watts capable on the inverter. Which, it's a big beast. And I'm actually going to do a video at some point where I intend to wind it into my solar PV setup. So I'm going to use an Arduino. I haven't figured out how to monitor the battery status yet without invasive work on it, if you know what I mean, as in going into it and adding a tap out. What's a shame on these is they don't have like a CAN line. That would be really good if they had a CAN or a UART with just a protocol that you could spill out the status.
Not
of the
even
battery.
USB comms.
No, there's nothing on them at all.
They'll
And like
throw
Bloody
most-
that
toy.
out.
It's just a toy. It's just a toy.
It's like most solar inverters are either RS484 or they have CAN bus. In fact, most of them have both. So I might have to do some invasive mods to add a battery level status. But what I do want to do on it is move all of my lighting in here and probably this machine onto the battery, and then have it that it kicks in charging in the day when my solar PV is generating, and just have a little bit of battery capacity. A kilowatt isn't going to run the earth, but a kilowatt is enough to, especially for the lighting.
I take my hat off to you, though. I take my hat off to you, Ian, because someone sends you a 1,000 watt hour battery and you're not on the Burns unit. That's pretty impressive.
It's not gone up yet. There is this irony. You guys can't see it, but there's like four stacked up over there because I've had different sizes in recent months. And yeah, I have thought there's a lot of potential. You know, I got a lot of lipos that worry me, but that really is. It's like having a Tesla battery in the room. But yes, but I don't think I have no plans of doing any more power station videos based on community feedback. Is the term I'll use. Which I do find frustrating because I did tackle them at a slightly different angle to everyone else. And the first one I did, I went very deep. We tore it down. I did what I did in the later videos was actually did all the testing on the oscilloscope, the battery capacity checks, and just talked about it rather than showed it. But it is what it is. I've got 2 3D printer videos to finish. You can see both of them. In fact, one of them is the enormous QDI, and for those who know about benchies, when you normally print a benchy that big, but I printed one that big because I can.
Do you get free filament as well?
Yeah, I've had that is 800 grams worth of PLA. It's nearly a spool, and it's not perfect. It has some errors you can see around there, and actually, it's not the printer. But I was using a very cheap spool, and we believe it didn't react well. But that's the QDI, which is there. But the Creality video is I'm just finishing that this week. There may be one more printer video which I can't talk about. I don't have it, but I will. I don't know if I'll be sent it. And then there's some drone reviews, but I need to stop reviews. I'm trying to slow down on reviews. It just, as Bruce will know what I mean. When Bruce was at his full swing on RC model reviews, it becomes a train, and it just like something comes. Oh, you got a week or so to put a video up, and it's nice, but it detracts from the stuff you really want to dig into at times, and the problem when you become a certain size is everyone sort of wants your audience to see their stuff, and you got to be very careful what you say yes to, and that's what people were kicking at batteries. You know, they're kicking back at that. Put a cube in the bench, full auto benchy.
That's a good idea. That's a really good idea.
I'd have to print a hollow. I should print a hollow one with a split, because I could print it split hollow, do like 4 layers of because at the moment that's 15% infill, but I have to do say 4 or 5 outside layers, and that would then give me, that's an idea. Let's do an RC benchy. I like that. I wonder, does that float? I haven't actually tried it yet.
No, they don't float. They don't float the right way up anyway.
No. I'm going to say there's a lot of weight on the top there, but we can fix that. But yeah, there is some stuff around the corner which I can't talk about. That's coming out. Nothing exciting, I think. The EcoFlow, yeah, and but it is interesting that you get pigeonholed by not only YouTube but your audience as well. And yeah, if McDonald's do want to send me a burger, I am really tempted to do a review on a burger. I am actually tempted. Just
that comment made me laugh. That made me laugh when I saw that.
Some things are too dangerous to review.
No,
McDonald's is one of them.
Ian, I dare you to do the following: a KFC versus McDonald's.
But that's like comparing apples and oranges. You can't do that.
No, it's chicken versus
Or
I
arsenic
would
and
say-
cyanide.
I can't. I better not say. I would guess McDonald's is a highly litigious company, so I think I better be very careful what I say. Bruce is
YouTube's
fine
all
over
about
there.
drama these days. You got to have the drama, mate.
Yes. But no, it's been a busy period. There's some exciting stuff around the corner, not so exciting stuff. We're really heading towards the end of the year, so we're heading into peak. You know, DJI would probably now be launching 1 or 2 products. We've got the Mini 2.
This is a Mini 4, isn't it?
The Mini
It's a
4.
Christmas drone.
Obviously, Bamboo have something in about a week.
Yes.
And they are absolutely playing the DJI playbook. And I mean, literally letter for letter, which is quite amusing to watch.
Does that include the leaks?
You're sorry?
Does that include the leaks? Because DJI, part of their marketing, is a lot of leaks.
No, they have been the opposite so far. Although I have seen some people post today,
No,
And
I think they're playing. I think they're playing a leak playbook
and
as
I
well.
think that could be the beginning of it. Yeah. But yeah, they're playing the game. But no, I think drones, that there's some interesting stuff, but it is all settling down. And the China thing has been a bit mixed. I had some products cancelled for review. That was fact. That was we're sending you this, and then a week later is we can't send you this. But components are making it out. But on the flip side, I had 2 drones turn up this week from Hong Kong, though. Now, Hong Kong is technically part of China, but it seems there's a route out via Hong Kong at the moment. I don't think the ban is going to have a great effect. I think it will have an effect, but it isn't dramatic.
Well, we shall see. And I saw Bruce pull a transmitter up there. Was that for demonstration purposes or just the teasers as it went by?
Oh, I saw someone talking about part 2s. This thing here, it's very interesting. I went out, I hadn't flown it. I went up my backyard and I fired up the quad, flew it around the front of the house, and my DJI digital system was dropping frames like hell, and then the quad fail-safed. What the hell's going on here? So I had a look. That antenna repair I thought I'd done doesn't look like it was effective. So with a bad SWR, that ELRS module seems to be spewing noise right across 2.4, 5.8, a whole lot, and it was desensitizing the receiver in my goggles to the effect that it was losing frames on 1.2 watts from about 30 meters away.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's a bit of a worry.
See,
I'm
and,
going
and I haven't watched your review yet, Bruce, because I didn't want to taint my own with anyone else's, if you know what I mean. But I need to go and watch. But I know you've had problems with yours, haven't you? Whereas
yeah.
mine's fine. Mine, I can't fault it. I genuinely can't. I can fault it. I think the plastic quality on the gimbals is not great. A lot of flex there, and there's too much. It's a bit too much vajazzle on it. You know what I mean?
That screen's fantastic, though, isn't it?
Oh, I love it. That screen is lovely. The OLED looks so nice.
You think so?
I like OLED. I like it.
Well, have you tried it outside in the? Oh, you don't have sun in the UK, but if
No,
you
no,
lived in New
outside
Zealand where
the
we have
UK.
sun,
No, I liked it. It's better than the LCDs.
no, I tell you what, I like the as far as screens go, the Radio Master Pocket. I'd rather have that screen than the one on the thing any day. You can read that in any condition.
A phenomenal radio for the money. The Pocket is the quality on the Pocket is.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I just got mine. The springs are still too tight, and the springs sticks
Yeah.
for me though. But
Yeah, the indents in the middle are very noticeable. You do, it slams you into them. But the pot, and I think that it's funny with radios. We've now got a whole slew in the mid category. Now we've got the small, the mid, the high. I don't really even know where radios are going to go now. You know,
well, if you watch my review of the T20, you'll see what I think about things. But that's part 1. I'll be doing part 3 because they're sending me a new antenna apparently with a new cable, so I'll try that. And when I get that, I'll do part 3. I don't do part 2s.
No, just go straight to part 3.
Straight to 3.
Yeah, no, I think and I'll be honest, I put it under the microscope, and the quality of and the only frustration I had was I didn't record. I recorded the audio of the video under the microscope, but not the video. So I have like a 3-minute segment of the boards under.
Make it a podcast. Make it a podcast.
And I can't fault the build quality. There's a lot of boards in this, so the BOM must be really high.
Yeah,
bomb.
see, interesting, because mine didn't have any audio when I got it because they hadn't soldered, or the little connector for the
Yes.
plug for the audio basically was floating around in the breeze. There was no sign of it ever being soldered. And I questioned the quality control, and Jumper said to me, oh, it's a pre-production unit. It's not actually a production unit. So whether that's true or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I think what I did say is, I think at the end of my review, I said the bit we don't know is the quality. Overall, mine is fine. Others have had issues, and that actually stands very much for that printer. The crazy thing about the K1 is mine is fine. However, there are people who've had some very real issues with them as well, and that's the problem with some of this stuff.
I'll send you some of my reviewer's curse if you like. It's very handy.
And look, if anyone's going to break it, it's going to be me. I tore it down. I pulled the connectors off. I was not gentle. I just got in there and ripped them off. It's not great to take apart, neither, is it, Bruce?
No.
It's a bit fiddly, to say the least.
And on that note, I think it's a bit fiddly, to say the least. It's the line of the week. We should say, did any more for any more before we go, gentlemen?
Yes, I did spot something in America where those people who flew a drone into a sports stadium. I see that one of them, or they both got a year of probation and 40 hours of community service for flying a drone into a sports stadium. There you go. The penalties aren't that high.
And I don't think we mentioned our parachuting out of the airplane chum, which at the time a name was completely gone, but he is going to prison.
Yeah, good job too.
Yeah, for lots and lots and lots of stuff. So yeah.
Well, actually, what I want to know, this is something too. Are those pilots who ejected from that Sukhoi? What was it, a Sukhoi? In America?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Who's being charged with the unlawful use of an uncrewed aircraft the moment they ejected? Because it crashed in the ground flames. They didn't have a permit for that. And it was over 155 pounds. It would have required certification, everything. So someone broke the FAA regulations. I want to know who's going to take the fall for it.
Yeah, that seems, and they're both out there with their stories, the front and back seat, because I think Commander Jet was in operation. I can't remember, but they're trying to get their stories out there before the board of inquiry, as it were. It's very interesting.
But apparently that's okay. You can crash a Russian fighter against an apartment block. That's fine. That's okay. But drones, recreational drones, they're far more dangerous. You can't be let to fly those. I don't know.
Crazy world. All right, then. I think on that's another second on that note. It's time to go. So, dear viewer, wherever you are in the world, thank you very much for being with us. I do appreciate you taking the time to join us for whatever. If it helps you through the day, that's good. Look after yourselves. We'll see you again, 2100 GMT next week. With no doubt. Next week's going to be. We'll be in RID. We'll be in place.
Yeah,
something.
It'll be in full operation.
Let's see. Be full operation. We'll see how well it's going. We'll see you again next week. Take care, everybody. Look after yourselves. Bye bye for now. Hits one button. Hits you.